Padma-Shri.
Namaskar. I'm grateful to Shubhranil Sarkar for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak about Mohiniyattam. I'm Vijayalakshmi. Mohiniyattam is the classical dance form of Kerala and translates into dance of the divine enchantress. The origin and evolution it owes its origin and evolution to the concept of Mohini, and therefore it is very important for both the dancer and the spectator to be aware of what the dance form literally translates into dance of the divine enchantress. So the spiritual aspect of the dance form is very, very important to be aware of, because Mohini, when Vishnu transformed himself into Mohini, she was a divine enchantress with a divine mission. The divine mission being to enable one to grow or evolve from lust to transcendence or higher consciousness. And therefore the dance form is also rooted very deeply in femininity, and we see that translating in the body language or the vocabulary of the dance form. The movements are very seamless, very graceful, very gentle, with no abrupt movements, and the movements evolve from the center of the body. They are circular in nature, and the movements are more internal rather than external, and I would say very much reminiscent of the martial art form of Kerala called Kalaripayattu. And it takes a lot from a dancer to understand this concept and then to be able to actually demonstrate it in the body movements. So now I'm going to just share with you some of the most significant aspects of the technique of Mohiniyattam. So the predominant mood that permeates the dance form is that of Shringara Rasa, which literally means love. So therefore the movements are very graceful, and now I'm going to just share with you some characteristic aspects. For example, I mentioned a few moments ago that the movements are very seamless and they just flow like a river, and I'll give you a small example of that. For example, a simple movement like the body just glides in a very natural manner, and it is not stop. It is not that, but it is a seamless way of moving the body, and the eyes are also used in a very powerful way. And I think one of the most amazing aspects of this dance form, I feel, is that it really compels the dancer to be natural. To be natural is a very major aspect of this dance form, and by that I mean, for example, a simple movement like dhi im ta ta dhi im ta. It also compels you to let go. If I were to do this movement by just keeping my body so stiff, my neck, it would not work. So Mohiniyattam, the technique compels you to also let go. And that to me is a very powerful aspect of the technique. So by letting go, I mean dhi, im, ta, ta, dhi, im, letting go from here and here. Dhi, im, ta, 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 dhi, im, ta, ta, dhi. So the torso, the play of the torso is the most significant aspect of the dance form, and you will notice that all the movements are circular in nature. For example, the other aspect of the technique is very often people or the audience undermines the strength that is required to do the technique of Mohiniyattam. Very often people are not aware of what it involves, and the way I would describe grace is grace, whether it's just physical grace or we are talking about grace in the figurative sense, grace always implies strength. It always implies strength. And by that, in terms of the physicality, what I mean is, if I have to show a movement like this, then it requires a very strong lower half of the body. It requires the body to be grounded, a very strong lower half of the body for the upper part of the body to be able to move effortlessly. So that's what I mean by grace also implies tremendous strength. And the movements are, like I said earlier, they are internal, and by that I mean it's easy, for example, for me to do something like this. Anybody can do this. But to do an internal, where the circle is happening from inside. The internal circle of the body is firstly difficult to understand, and then secondly to be able to translate it in the body language. So this I find even students who've had a background in dance, very often they find it very challenging. And finally, I'd like to say that the technique of Mohiniyattam, to me, it provides a very deep insight into some of the most fundamental aspects of life itself, where grace is grace in a, whether it's grace in a woman, or where grace is beyond just a feminine attribute, where I'm talking about human grace. And if we talk of some of the greatest people in the world in our recent history, like Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or any of these great people, they are people who never believed in aggression. Their greatest strength, their strength lied with their grace. It lay with their grace. And aggression is certainly not a sign of power. And I think if there were to be more grace in people, regardless of gender, there would definitely be more harmony in the world, whether it's interpersonal relationships or between nations. And I think true power lies with grace, and grace and strength are two sides of the same coin. If anything, aggression is a sign of weakness, and I think grace is definitely the way forward for the world order. I hope you find whatever I shared today interesting and valuable, and I'd like to leave you with this. Namaskar.